The blizzard outside raged like a wild beast, the wind howling through every crack in the tower, carrying with it the sting of icy snow that slapped against the tall, narrow windows. The world beyond the stone walls had vanished, swallowed by a whirlwind of white. The tower groaned in protest, its ancient stones shuddering under the storm's relentless assault, as though the chaos outside had sparked a battle between nature and this stubborn structure. Brill sat by the fire, her legs tucked beneath the thick blanket she'd dragged from her bed. The light of the flames danced across her face, catching on the faint curve of her smile as she watched the snow swirl beyond the window. A well-worn book lay open in her lap, An Intentional Harvest, planting by the moon, season by season. But her gaze had long since drifted from its pages. "It's beautiful," she said softly, her voice carrying a reverence that cut through the storm's roar. "The way it moves, like the wind is alive, wild, untamed." Her fingers absently traced the edge of the page, but her attention was fixed on the window, where the snow twisted in ghostly spirals. I stepped into the room, the scent of peppermint cocoa trailing behind me as I carried a steaming mug in hand. "Beautiful for you," I said, smirking as I offered her the drink. "For the tower? It's a full-on brawl out there." She glanced up, her grin softening as she accepted the mug. "The tower's holding its own," she replied, taking a sip. Her eyes closed briefly, and a soft, content sigh slipped out. "Fantas, this is perfect. The peppermint's just enough. It's like..." She paused, the faintest hint of pink brushing her cheeks. "It's like it really is Christmas Eve." I leaned casually against the mantel of the fireplace, the firelight throwing long shadows against the stone walls. "Brilmas Eve, you mean," I corrected with a smirk. "The people of this world have no clue what Christmas is. You're the only reason it exists here at all. So, it's Brilmas. Your holiday, your rules." I grinned wider. "Besides, if this storm gets any worse, the tower might decide it's our fault and throw us out." She laughed, shaking her head as she looked back at the blizzard. "Let it try. There's something ironic about it, don't you think? The chaos out there, wild and untamed, while in here..." She gestured around the room, her gaze lingering on the flickering fire. "We're safe. It's balance, intentional chaos." "Intentional chaos," I echoed, smirking. "You do love your contradictions." Her grin widened, but her gaze drifted to the window where the storm raged on. "That's why Nonum feels so special. It's the culmination, the peak of everything before the end. The tower might groan and grumble, but it's part of the cycle, right? The last storm before..." She trailed off, her brow furrowing. "Before the buyer resets after the triarch?" I leaned against the mantel, nodding. "You've got it. Nonim's the finale of the buyer. Like a year of your old world, but shorter. Just the closing act for this chapter." I tilted my head toward the book in her lap. "What's your tome say about it? Anything enlightening?" She flipped to a ribbon-marked page, her fingers trailing over the yellowed paper. It says, "Nonim is a time of culmination, the buyer's essence distilled into its final deca. It demands presence, reflection, and a readiness for change. The seeds sown throughout the buyer come to bear their final fruits." Her voice softened as she read, lingering on the last line. "It's confusing, but poetic." "Poetic," I repeated with a grin. "But let's be honest, the tower doesn't care about poetry. Though if you say Nonim demands presence, I might just deliver." I gave a flourishing bow. "After all, Brilmas deserves no less." She laughed, her voice warm against the storm's icy chaos. "Presents, not presents," she teased. "The tower wouldn't even understand Christmas if we gave it an instruction manual. It'd probably give us mistletoe that whispers unsolicited advice, or a bathtub that smells like pine sap." Sounds about right, but hey, presents are presents, even if they glow or talk back. Her smile softened, and I watched her finger trace the rim of the mug, her cheeks warming as she glanced away. "You really went and renamed it, huh?" I shrugged, keeping my tone easy but sincere. "It's not like anyone else here would have thought to name it, and You're the reason it exists. Feels right. She didn't respond immediately, taking another sip to hide the shy smile tugging at her lips. But it's not like I made it up. It was something that existed, even if it never has here, she grumbled in protest. No one cares about that, I said with a cheeky grin. Either way, I'll make sure it gets at least one thing right tomorrow. Her fingers tapped lightly on the book, her gaze brightening as she traced a paragraph. Speaking of intentionality, she said, her voice soft but thoughtful. Nonem's also the best time to plant indoors. The frozen ground outside is useless, but with the moon closest to the earth, its pull quickens growth. A steam room, the baths, maybe even the alchemy room. It's perfect for starting seedlings. I arched a brow, leaning back. You'd turn every room in this tower into a garden if you could. What's next? Orchards in the clock chamber. Don't tempt me, she shot back, her grin widening. Even in chaos, there's a culmination, and if there's not... She gestured vaguely at the book, her gaze flicking toward me with that familiar spark of mischief. That's where we get creative. The fire crackled in response, its warmth filling the space, and for a moment the storm outside seemed almost distant. Her voice softened again as she flipped another page, fingers brushing over the book's worn spine. We still owe Aiken a book, don't we? She murmured. We promised to find him something worthy of his shelves. I nodded, my gaze shifting to the snow-lashed window. We do. I'll figure something out. She settled back into her chair, the mug cradled in her hands as the firelight flickered across her face. Her attention drifted, her eyes fluttering shut as the warmth of the cocoa and the fire lulled her into stillness. A few moments passed before she stretched and moved to her bed, dragging the blanket with her. Good night, Fantas, she murmured as she curled under the covers. Good night, Brill, I replied softly. The firelight flickered over her, the storm raging beyond the walls. But she was already sinking into sleep, her breathing slow and steady. I reached out to catch the book as it slipped from her grasp, setting it carefully on the table beside her. For a moment, I stood there, watching Brill as she slept, her breathing steady and peaceful under the flickering firelight. I knew what tomorrow meant to her. It wasn't just another cycle. It was something sacred, a thread of wonder carried from the old world. The tower seemed to sense it too, its shifting quiet as though holding its breath for Brilmas. I turned toward the corridor, the soft glow of the fire receding as I stepped out into the tower's dim, winding halls. The air felt charged, the kind of energy that hums in the bones rather than the ears. The blizzard outside howled, its ferocity dulled by the thick stone walls, but it mirrored the swirling anticipation within me. I hadn't gone far when a door ahead caught my attention, slightly ajar. A flickering light spilled through its edges, warm and uneven like a candle fighting against the dark. As I approached, the air thickens, humid and cloying, carrying the faint aroma of melting wax and the distant drone of cicadas. The door creaks open further as though inviting me in, and the tower falls away. I stand on a veranda bathed in the golden haze of late afternoon sunlight. The air is thick with the sticky heat of an Australian summer, heavy enough to cling to the skin. Bowls of colorful wax chips sit on the table nearby, their edges softening in the sun, while a pot of molten wax bubbles gently over a small electric burner. A young Brill, no more than 4 or 5, sits cross-legged on the wooden floor. Her tiny frame is hunched over a sheet metal mold, her small, careful hands arranging ice cubes into precise patterns. Her wild red hair clings to her damp forehead, her cheeks flushed with excitement. She works with a focus far beyond her years, her little world consumed by this single task. Nearby, her sisters chatter and giggle, their voices mingling with the endless drone of cicadas. But Brill is in her own moment, her determination undistracted by the noise around her. Be careful, her father warns gently from the table, his tone calm but firm. He pours the melted wax into a smaller container, ready to help when she is done. Brill doesn't respond, her focus entirely on her task. The veranda boards creak as he moves, but his presence fades into the background of the scene. This is her moment. Finally satisfied, she looks up with a grin that rivals the sun. I'm ready, she declares, her voice bright with pride. Her father nods and carefully pours the molten wax over her creation. It hisses and steams as it hits the ice, the golden liquid snaking its way through the mold, filling the spaces she has so meticulously planned. As the wax cools, the younger Brill sits back on her heels, hands clasped in front of her as though holding on to her excitement. "This one's for Santa," she says, her voice brimming with confidence. "He's going to love it." The veranda flickers and the scene dissolves into a living room. The air shifts, heavy with the slow, wafting heat of air, pushed around by a ceiling fan spinning overhead. The smell of gingerbread mingles with the scent of freshly cooked bacon, and a plastic tree stands awkwardly in the corner. Its branches sag slightly under the weight of mismatched ornaments and clumps of tinsel that catch the light. Brill sits on the carpet near the tree, her sisters tearing through brightly wrapped gifts with gleeful abandon. The soft hum of Christmas carols plays on a cheap radio somewhere out of sight, its tinny notes barely audible over the excitement. Brill, however, moves slowly. A rectangular package rests in her lap, its cheerful red wrapping paper adorned with a bow she can't help but touch before peeling it away. As the paper falls away, her small hands still. A golden candle, smooth and dotted with the telltale holes left by melting ice cubes, lies nestled within. She stares at it for a long moment, her breath catching. The candle's ribbon is different, neatly tied, deliberate, but it is unmistakably hers. The tag attached reads simply, "To Brill, from Santa." The world begins to shift, the edges of the room blurring as though retreating from her. I can hear her sister's laughter, faint and far away, like a melody out of reach. The carols from the radio, once sharp and cheery, dissolve into a hum of distorted notes. It's as if the world itself is pulling away, leaving only her in this moment. I watch her, my circuits humming with unease, as her small hands grip the candle tighter, her fingers pressing into the wax with a deliberate force. Her shoulders start to curve inward, folding around herself like a fragile shell. There's no sudden gasp, no shattering of tears or cries of protest, no outward display of what's happening inside her. She just stills. She doesn't cry, she doesn't lash out, but I see it, the fracture. It's not the kind that breaks into pieces, but the kind that sinks deep, like a crack running through the foundation. She bows her head, her wild red hair falling around her face, hiding the expression that I know must be etched with something heavy, something she doesn't yet know how to carry. I want to step forward. My circuits pulse with the need to intervene, to say something, to do anything. But I'm stuck, anchored in place, as if the tower itself is holding me back, forcing me to witness every second. I'm trapped in this moment, powerless to stop it, powerless to ease the weight pressing down on her small frame. The light from the tree twinkles around her, sharp and jarring against the stillness in her movements. She's frozen, clutching the candle like it's both an anchor and a betrayal. Her breath catches, just once, but it's enough. Enough for me to see how deep this cuts, how it's hollowing something out of her. And then she moves. Slowly, deliberately, she stands. There's a weight to her movements, a heaviness that makes the air around her feel thicker, like even the space she occupies is reluctant to let her go. Her sister's laughter continues in the background, oblivious to what's unfolding. The tree's lights reflect faintly in her eyes, but there's no sparkle, no magic. Just a quiet determination as she turns and steps toward me. Her eyes meet mine, wide, gray, and filled with something I can't fully name. Sadness, betrayal, defiance. Her small figure is shadowed by the glow of the tree behind her, the light outlining her silhouette in a way that makes her seem both fragile and unyielding. "This world sets you up like this," she says, her voice soft but steady. "It builds you up with lies, just to smash you apart, so you won't fight back later." She holds out the candle, her hands trembling now, but still firm in their intent. "Take it," she says, her tone leaving no room for refusal. The warmth of the candle seeps into my hand as I accept it, its surface smooth under my fingers. The light flickers faintly, its glow pushing back the shadows creeping into the edges of the room. I glance down at the candle in my hand, then back up to her. But she's already gone. The room dissolves, the memory unraveling into golden light. I am pushed into the tower's corridor once more, the golden candle burning steadily in my hand. Ahead, a new door glows, its frame warm and inviting. Another room waiting just beyond. I tighten my grip on the candle, its warmth grounding me as I step forward, the weight of the past settling over me like a shadow. I step in, pushing the door wide open as I enter. I watch as the room stretches out before me, dim and lifeless, the air heavy with expectation. At its center stands a tree, or rather, what's left of one. Its skeletal branches twist upward, stark and barren, their blackened wood reflecting faint glimmers of light from dozens of orbs, floating erratically above. Each one is a streak of color darting through the shadows, chaotic and untamed, as though the room itself can barely contain them. The air hums with energy, a sharp static charge that prickles at the edges of my circuits. Camphor wood fills my senses, its distinct earthy warmth mingling with the tang of impending magic. The door behind me slams shut and the orbs pause mid-flight as if startled. Their glow intensifies and then, like a warning shot, they scatter, spiraling in frantic loops, faster and wilder. I take a step forward, and the tree creaks, its brittle branches swaying as though sensing my presence. The orbs dip lower, circling like predators closing in. One of them, a glowing green light, zips straight at me. I dodge instinctively, its sharp hum slicing past my ear. The room isn't waiting for me to act. It's challenging me. "Fine," I mutter, rolling my shoulders. "Let's play." The green orb swings back around, buzzing like an angry hornet, its energy crackling in the air. My eyes dart around the room, and I grab the nearest object, the candlestick. There's no time to think. The orb dives, a streak of glowing green, and I swing with all the precision panic allows. The candlestick connects with a sharp, electrified crack, sending the orb careening into the wall. It trembles where it lands, its light flickering erratically like a stunned firefly. The room holds its breath as I approach, the air vibrating with the faint hum of residual energy. I reach out cautiously, my fingers brushing the surface of the orb. Warmth floods my hand as the light dims, the energy within condensing and shifting until I'm no longer holding light, but something tangible. A delicate hammer ornament rests in my palm, its polished surface reflecting faint glimmers of the surrounding light. The name comes to me unbidden, as if whispered by the ornament itself. Angry Davo. I step toward the skeletal tree, the ornament seeming to pull me forward. As I hang it on a low branch, the connection is immediate. A ripple of life surges through the wood, radiating outward from where the hammer hangs on its delicate loop. Blackened bark shivers, and vibrant green needles unfurl around the ornament, sharp and jagged, like tiny tools ready to defend their place. The tree accepts the addition, its energy shifting in quiet recognition. The room doesn't remain still for long. The orbs react, their chaotic movements intensifying as if my success has roused something primal. Lights streak around me faster and wilder. Among the frenzy, a soft red glow draws my eye. A heart-shaped orb drifting serenely amidst the chaos. Its calm steadiness is almost hypnotic, a moment of stillness in the storm. I move toward it, my hand stretching out cautiously. The glow warms as I draw near, inviting, but just as my fingers brush its surface, a streak of golden light shoots toward me. The collision is electric, the impact jolting through my circuits and forcing me back. Dagger, scanning the ground for anything at all I could use as a lifeline as the orbs swarm closer, their energy crackling in the charged air. "All right, diesel power," I snap, narrowing my eyes at the golden, crackling orb. "You want to fight?" It hovers mockingly before launching toward me again. I sidestep its charge, snatching a length of ribbon from the ground, and whirl around, trapping the orb in a makeshift lasso. It sparks and thrashes as I wrestle it into submission, finally locking it in my grip. It solidifies into a lightning bolt ornament, buzzing faintly as I place it on the tree. A faint glow spreads upward, and the tree's skeletal branches begin to soften, hints of green needles sprouting with quiet joy. And then there it was. The red heart-shaped orb had come back around, hovering patiently this time. When I reach for it, it meets me halfway. The warmth blooms in my palm, steady and reassuring. split. The ornament takes its place high on the tree, and the branches near it unfurl, their tips shimmering as though kissed by sunlight. Another orb, a lazy purple glow, hovers near the base of the tree, drifting in a slow, almost taunting circle. Its sluggishness feels deliberate, as if daring me to come closer. I step toward it, my hand outstretched, but just as my fingers brush its edge, it zips away with an infuriating burst of speed. "Really?" I mutter, narrowing my eyes. The orb's light flickers teasingly, pulsing as if it's laughing at me. My frustration builds as I dart after it, weaving through the chaotic room, the orb always managing to stay just out of reach. It leads me on a merry chase, dodging and darting, until finally, I corner it against the wall. This time, I'm not playing nice. With a quick, decisive motion, I snatch it from the air. A faint zap of energy jolts through my fingers as the orb solidifies, its light dimming into something solid. I open my hand to find a smoothie-shaped ornament resting in my palm, its surface gleaming with an almost smug sheen. "Dunk Star," I say under my breath, exhaling sharply. The ornament pulls in my hand like it has its own gravity, dragging my arm toward the tree as if the branch is calling for it. As soon as the smoothie-shaped ornament meets the branch, it locks into place with a magnetic certainty. The branch shivers, its needles bursting outward in an almost dramatic flourish, thickening into dense, vibrant clusters. The transformation feels alive, almost defiant, as if the tree itself is asserting, "This belongs here." I step back, watching the energy ripple through the nearby branches, their greens deepening as if feeding on the ornament's presence. My lips twitch into a reluctant grin. A crystalline orb catches my attention next, refracting rainbows as it flits through the room. Mr. Neil. It's elusive, weaving through the other orbs as if playing a game. I time my reach carefully, snatching it mid-flight. It solidifies into a delicate icicle-like ornament, and as I place it, the tree seems to sparkle, its needles catching and scattering light in vibrant patterns. Each ornament seems to transform the tree further, bringing it closer to life. The air around me grows heavier, the remaining orbs buzzing like a storm. Makrov's deep blue light charges toward me with unexpected speed, forcing me to dive out of its way. I recover quickly, catching it just as it loops back around. It becomes a shimmering, clear blue ornament, which seemed to hold water trapped inside a bubble. And as I place it, the branches near it flourish to life and stretch upward, proud and unyielding. The other orbs begin to slow, their chaotic energy softening into a deliberate rhythm. One by one, they abandon their frenzied flight, gathering near the crown of the tree. The glowing lights weave together, forming a luminous spiral that ascends higher and higher, their combined radiance almost blinding. At the very top, the light coalesces into a single brilliant form, a crown, delicate and regal, its golden surface shimmering with intricate patterns that seem alive. With a graceful descent, the crown settles onto the highest point of the tree, its glow radiating outward in a pulse that seems to echo in my circuits. With a low groan, the tree shudders, the sound resonating through the room like the first note of a symphony. Then it happens. A ripple, faint at first, runs down its newly fleshed out branches. Slowly, like a great beast waking from slumber, I witness the tinsel snake its way around the tree's height, and delicate little tufts of crystals decorate the tips of the new needles, soft and vibrant. The transformation spreads outward, faster now, the branches quivering as they burst into lush, verdant life. A cascade of color follows, each ornament glimmering to life in response, their light dancing across the tree's surface. The air around me shifts. It's not just warm, it's electric, charged with a magic that feels alive and brimming with intention. Threads of light weave through the air, spiraling toward the tree like whispers of stardust. The branches respond, stretching outward, their tips shimmering as though they've been dusted with frost. The ornaments pulse softly, their glow intensifying in perfect harmony. each one adding its voice to a radiant chorus of color and light. The needles glisten with an almost dewy sheen, catching the twinkling lights that now wrap around the tree in a shimmering embrace. The starry threads climb higher, spiraling to the tree's peak where they gather, swirling into a brilliant burst of light. A final ornament, the candle at the crown, flares to life, its flame flickering with a golden warmth that bathes the entire room in its glow. The transformation ripples outward, touching the floor beneath my feet. The cold stone trembles, then softens, shifting in texture and color. Warm, plush carpet spreads across the room in a wave of deep crimson, its surface threaded with intricate gold patterns that catch and reflect the tree's shimmering light. The once barren floor now feels alive, inviting, every step sinking into its lush fibers. The walls brighten, their cold stone surface warming into a soft, glowing finish that complements the radiance of the tree. Tiny motes of light hang in the air, sparkling faintly, and the camphor scent deepens, grounding the ethereal wonder with a nostalgic warmth. The shadows that once clung to the edges of the room dissolve into the golden light, leaving every corner aglow. The tree quakes gently, shaking off the last remnants of its skeletal form, as though settling into its new life. Its branches sway, heavy with the weight of their adornments, yet proud, regal even. The ornaments shimmer in perfect rhythm, their colors blending and scattering like a kaleidoscope. The entire room feels alive now, vibrating with the energy of something greater than the sum of its parts. I step back, my breath catching as I take it all in. The room, once stark and bare, has become a sanctuary of wonder. The tree stands tall and complete, a masterpiece of life and light. The golden glow spills across the newly carpeted floor and walls, refracting off the ornaments and scattering soft rainbows into the air. Even the air itself feels different, charged and sparkling, as though the magic has seeped into every molecule. For a moment, I simply stand there, awestruck by the sheer beauty of it all. The chaotic energy that filled the room earlier has settled into a quiet, resounding harmony. It's not just a tree. It's not just a room. It's a celebration of everything Brilmas is meant to be. That, I finally say, a faint grin tugging at my lips, was worth it. My voice is quiet, reverent, barely more than a whisper in the radiant stillness. The tree seems to agree, its lights flickering playfully as though acknowledging the effort it took to bring it to life. And for the first time since I entered the tower's halls tonight, I feel it, a sense of completion, of triumph. Brilmas, in all its chaotic, magical glory, is here. I step back, taking in the scene one last time. The room feels alive, humming with the magic that binds it all together. Yet even amidst this radiant accomplishment, there's a tug in my circuits, a pull that refuses to settle. It's not enough, not yet. This isn't all of it, I murmur, my gaze drifting to the door. The tree stands tall, its brilliance unmatched. But Brilmas isn't just about the tree, it's about something more, something personal. A perfect gift. One that speaks not just to what Brill loves, but who she is. The wonder she's brought to this world, to me. I can't shake the thought, the certainty that there's something out there, waiting to be found. I glance back at the tree, its lights flickering warmly. "All right, Tower," I mutter, stepping toward the door. "Let's see what you've got for me." The door creaks open, the faint draft of cold air biting against the warmth of the room. As I step through, the shift is immediate. The hallway narrows, the familiar stone walls stretching into something darker, undefined. The air grows colder, heavier, the warmth of the tree fading behind me. And then the floor seems to vanish beneath my feet. The storm's grip pulls me in the moment I step through. Snow slams into me with a ferocity that feels almost intentional, and the tower is gone. I spin around, desperate to see its familiar silhouette, but there's nothing. Only endless white chaos, the blizzard swallowing everything whole. "Well," I mutter, my voice lost in the howling wind. "Guess the tower really did throw me out." The joke doesn't land, even with myself. The cold bites deep and the storm howls louder, as if mocking me. I turn again, my circuits thrumming with the sharp hum of disorientation. Every direction looks the same: white, raging, featureless. Panic presses in at the edges of my thoughts. Where is she? Did Brill get caught out here too? The storm pulls me in like a predator, its icy claws tearing through every sense. Snow slams into me from all sides, blinding and deafening. The winds howl, wrapping around me like a vice. The tower's gone. I spin, frantic, searching for its silhouette, but there's only white chaos. My circuits spark with disarray, overwhelmed by the endless void. Then, flashes. Brill alone. She's by the fire, but it's wrong. Her form is slumped, her head bowed under an invisible weight. The flames flicker weakly, pale shadows failing to warm her. My circuits hum with alarm. I try to reach her, but the storm yanks me back. I stagger, snow clawing at my frame. The world shifts. A tower on fire. Its walls are alight, flames licking hungrily at the stone. Smoke chokes the air, heavy and oppressive. The walls sag under the weight of destruction. I feel it press into me, a heaviness I can't shake. The storm pulls me under. I fall to my knees, snow slicing into me like shards of glass. My circuits pulse erratically, overloaded. Another flash, laughter. Brill, surrounded by friends. The tower alive with light and warmth, her laughter ringing out like music. The joy wraps around me, a balm against the cold, until it's gone. Smoke again, shadows again. I stumble forward and the storm parts briefly. A field of sunflowers. Brill runs, her hair a fiery ribbon against the golden sea. Her laughter is free, unrestrained, her arms reaching as though to embrace the entire field. The sight grips me, so vivid it feels real. I reach out, desperate to hold onto it. But the sunflowers twist, their golden faces wilting, their stalks crumbling into ash. The storm howls louder, its voice a cacophony. The flashes come faster now, disjointed and overwhelming. Brill's face, the tower in ruins, laughter, silence, joy, despair. Each fragment sharp and jarring, dragging me deeper into chaos. The future, this storm, it's too much, infinite, unknowable. My circuits can't process it. I was built to calculate, to make sense of things. But this is uncalculatable. This is possibility. And it terrifies me. I try to stand, but the ground tilts beneath me. My knees hit the snow again, the cold biting into my frame. My circuits scream for clarity, for reason, but the storm denies me at every turn. Through the roar, a flicker of gold. A faint chime, delicate and clear, cuts through the chaos. My head jerks toward the sound, my circuits straining for focus. The storm doesn't stop. It presses harder, the snow blinding and relentless. But the chime persists, pulling me forward. Faint and pulsing like a heartbeat, the light cuts through the storm's fury. It's distant, fragile, but enough. My circuits lock onto it and I force myself to stand. The glow beckons, its golden warmth promising something. What? I don't know. But it's better than this. I push toward it, the storm fighting me every step of the way. Snow lashes at me, the wind roaring in my ears. My circuits strain the effort to keep moving nearly too much, but the glow grows brighter, pulling me closer until at last I see it. A black leather collar hangs from a frozen branch. The leather glistens faintly, and at its center swings a golden bell. It glows softly, its etched surface catching the faint light of the storm. I hesitate, the sight almost surreal. The leather encrusted by ice, but the bell's golden sheen radiates a warmth that feels out of place in the storm's icy chaos. It swings violently, trapped in the howling wind, but its chime, clear, resonant, steady, cuts through the storm like a lifeline. I reach out, my hand trembling as my fingers brush the leather. It's warm, its texture smooth and yielding under my touch. I lift it from the branch, and the bell chimes again, the sound rippling outward in golden waves. The storm recoils slightly, the wind faltering as though caught off guard. I shake the bell again, its chime louder this time, more insistent. The sound pierces the storm, and faint paths of golden light flicker into view. They waver uncertain, like threads of possibility, barely holding together. The bell chimes again and the flickers grow stronger. I step forward cautiously, the path solidifying with each step. The storm presses in harder, shadows swirling at its edges, fragments of futures trying to pull me back. A tower bright with life, laughter, light, and song fill its halls. Brill stands at the center, surrounded by people, her face lit with a joy that feels like the sun. Brill alone. She's older, her hair streaked with lots of gray. She sits by the fire, her expression concerned and distant, her eyes watching a world I can't see. The storm shifts, dragging the visions away and leaving me unsteady, like a puppet with its strings cut. My knees tremble, but I clutch the bell tighter, its chime vibrating through me like a heartbeat. It grounds me, pulling me back from the storm's edge. Ahead, the golden path flickers, tenuous and fragile, stretching forward like a thread of light in the void. I force myself to follow it, step by step, each movement heavy with the weight of the storm still clinging to me. The snow lashes at my back, the wind howling in protest, as though the storm itself is reluctant to release me. The golden path grows stronger with every step, its light steadying as the chaos around me begins to thin. The wind softens, the snow's assault slows, and the blizzard gives way to a muted quiet. Then, through the haze, I see it, the familiar silhouette of the tower rising against the storm's backdrop. Relief surges through me, and without thinking, I start to run. The bell in my hand hums faintly, its sound cutting through the last remnants of chaos, guiding me toward the tower's front door. My circuits ache with exhaustion. My legs threaten to buckle, but the sight of home drives me forward. As soon as I reach the door, I grab onto it like a lifeline. My fingers curl around the heavy handle, pulling it open with a groan of effort. The warmth of the tower spills out, washing over me like a wave, and I practically fall inside, slamming the door shut behind me with a sharp, echoing thud. I lean against it, the cold biting at my circuits as I clutch the bell and collar. Its weight is reassuring, its golden gleam a reminder of what brought me back. The tower hums faintly, its air carrying the familiar scent of camphor mingled with something richer, something alive. The contrast is stark, almost jarring. The chaotic storm outside and the tranquil promise within. The echoes of the storm linger in me, their fury etched into my circuits, a reminder of how vast and unknowable the future truly is. My grip tightens on the bell and collar as I slide to the floor, my mind racing. I made it. I'm here. The bell chimes softly, its sound a warm, steady note that resonates in the quiet. Reassuring, comforting, as though whispering, "You've found your way." I push myself upright, brushing the frost from my frame as the tower's warmth begins to seep in, grounding me. The familiar walls steady my thoughts, their quiet strength a stark contrast to the chaos I've just escaped. As I turn toward the corridor, a low, melodic hum catches my attention. I pause, glancing back to see the elevator standing open, its polished brass doors glowing faintly under the sparkle of delicate floating lights that drift in the hallway. For a moment, I hesitate. The elevator is infamous, its whims as unpredictable as the tower itself. It never answers calls, never follows commands. Yet here it is, silent, waiting, as though it had been summoned by something deeper than intention. "Well," I mutter, stepping inside, "fancy seeing you here." The air within is warm, carrying a faint blend of pine and camphor. There are no buttons, no levers, just the quiet hum of purpose as the doors slide closed and the elevator begins to rise. Smooth and steady, it moves with a certainty I can't explain. It stops with a faint chime, the door sliding open to reveal the corridor outside Brill's room. The soft glow of firelight spills out from under her door, warm and inviting. I step out, the elevator closing behind me as quietly as it had opened. The sight of the light makes something in me relax, the storm's grip loosening further. I nudge the door open just enough to peek inside. Brill is still sleeping, curled beneath her blanket, her wild hair spilling across the pillow. The fire casts soft, dancing shadows over her peaceful face, and for the first time tonight, I feel a deep, unshakable relief. She's here. She's safe. I could feel the weight of the bell resting in my hand as I pulled the door closed, leaving her to rest. I turned toward the kitchen, the corridor stretching out before me like a quiet promise as I made my way down its stone path. The kitchen greets me with a comforting warmth, its glow stretching into the corners where shadows once lingered. The worn wooden shelves are lined with jars and tins, their labels faded but still legible, each one promising something extraordinary. In the center of it all rests the cookbook, kitchen charms and brews of forgotten times, its edges frayed from years of use, its pages whispering promises of tradition and magic. I flip through the familiar pages, my fingers brushing over faded ink and flour-dusted parchment, until I find the recipe: golden hearth waffles for joyful morn. The title glimmers faintly as though the words themselves hold a touch of enchantment. The ingredients draw me in with their own subtle magic. The flour is fine and light as snowfall, sifting through my fingers like whispers of the storm outside. I select eggs with deep indigo shells, their surfaces gleaming faintly in the hearthlight, as though hiding the secrets of galaxies within. The golden honey flows like molten amber, its sweet, heady scent filling the air. The bowl rings faintly as I crack the eggs against its edge, their shells splitting with a satisfying crack. The yolks spill into the bowl like tiny suns, vibrant and glowing, their golden richness mirrored by the honey I drizzle in. A cascade of milk follows, its pale stream curling into the mixture, like ribbons of moonlight. I add a pinch of cinnamon, its warm, spiced scent mingling with the faintest hint of clove, and a dash of nutmeg, grounding the sweetness with a quiet depth. The whisk moves through the mixture with a steady rhythm, its sound a soft swish against the sides of the bowl. The batter thickens under my care, smooth and golden, the honey folding into it with an almost luxurious embrace. Each swirl feels like a promise, the kitchen filling with the aroma of warm, spiced sweetness. On the hearth, I light the flame, its raw fire roaring to life with a crackle that hums through my circuits. The waffle mold, a well-worn cast-iron treasure, warms steadily. I drop a knob of butter into its grooves, watching it melt with a gentle hiss. The scent rises rich and nutty, curling around me like a memory I didn't know I had. As the batter touches the hot mold, it sizzles immediately, the surface bubbling faintly before settling into golden calm. I press the lid down, its weight grounding me as the kitchen fills with the promise of something sweet, something celebratory. While the waffles cook, I turn to the bacon. The thick slices, marbled with just the right amount of fat, glisten under the kitchen light as I lay them carefully onto the baking tray. Sliding the tray into the raw flame oven, I feel the heat pulse against my circuits, the aroma of roasting meat already weaving into the sweetness of the waffles. As the room fills with these scents, I glance toward the windowsill. A small pot of mint sits there, its leaves still vibrant and green despite the storm raging beyond the glass. I pluck a few, their stems snapping with a crisp sound, and roll the leaves between my fingers. Their sharp, bright fragrance fills the air, cutting through the heavier notes of spice. I pause, the storm beyond the glass catching my eye. Snow batters the panes in relentless waves, the blizzard still wild and unyielding. My circuits hum faintly, their rhythm steadying as I stand there watching. I think about the chaos I've just weathered, the uncertainty, the sheer weight of the unknown, and let the warmth of the kitchen press against the storm's lingering grip. The storm's fury reminds me of the future, vast, relentless, and unknowable. It pulls my thoughts to Brill, to the way she's held onto this wonder, this magic, despite everything. How did she keep her love for Brilmas alive after what happened? After the last Christmas her family shared left her hollowed out. Yet somehow, she carries it still, fierce and shining, as though defying the world's attempts to dim it. The smell of waffles and bacon fills the air, bringing my focus back from the storm outside. Brill is safe, the tower's holding, and I have a purpose: to make this morning everything it should be. I return to the counter and retrieve the collar and bell. Their simplicity is striking, the supple black leather soft against my fingers, the golden bell gleaming faintly in the low light. I wrap them in rich green velvet, tying the package with a golden cord that catches the glow of the hearthlight. It feels right, a gift filled with meaning. The waffles emerge golden and steaming, their edges crisp and perfect. I stack them high, adding a generous drizzle of honey, its amber hue pooling in the grooves. The bacon joins them on the plate, its edges curling and crisp. A mug of steaming peppermint cocoa finishes the spread, its frothy surface dusted with crushed mint leaves and a sprinkle of freshly ground cinnamon. I set the table, arranging the waffles with the fat-baked bacon layered on top, the honey, and the mug with deliberate care. The present takes its place beneath the tree, nestled among its boughs as if it had always belonged there. For a moment, I step back, taking it all in. The glow, the warmth, the quiet magic of Brilmas. With everything in place, I return to Brill's room. The firelight flickers as I push the door open, her form still curled beneath the blanket. "Brill," I whisper softly. She stirs, her face scrunching slightly as she burrows deeper into the covers. "Too early," she mutters, her voice muffled. "Too early for Brilmas?" I tease, leaning closer. "Come on, you're going to want to see this." She groans dramatically, letting me help her out of bed. Her steps are heavy, her eyes barely open as she leans against me, her hair a wild, untamed mess. We make our way down the corridor, her head drooping as if she might fall asleep standing up. But as soon as we reach the Brilma's room and its golden light spills over her, she stops. Brill's eyes catch on the tree first. I watch as her breath hitches slightly, her gaze tracing the ornaments, the needles, the faint shimmer of the golden crown at the top. She's still, completely still, as though the sight has frozen her in place. Her face softens, the lingering haze of sleep melting away, replaced by something raw, something vulnerable. The awe in her expression tugs at something deep within me. Her gaze drifts slower now, as though she's afraid to look away. It lands on the table next, the golden waffles stacked high. Honey pooled in their grooves, the bacon curled in crisp edges stacked on top. The mug of cocoa sends faint tendrils of steam curling into the air, and for a moment the quiet wonder in her eyes seems to shift to disbelief. "You did all this?" she asks, her voice soft, almost hesitant. It's not just surprise I hear. There's something deeper, like she can't quite allow herself to believe it. I grin, letting the warmth of her reaction seep into my circuits. "Who else?" My voice is lighter than I feel, my chest buzzing with quiet satisfaction. "Come on, sit, eat. You've got a big day ahead." Her steps are hesitant, as if she's afraid something will shatter this fragile moment. But there's an eagerness to her movement that speaks louder. She lowers herself into the chair, her hands lingering on the edge of the table for a beat before she picks up her fork. I don't move. I stay where I am, leaning against the counter, watching her. She takes the first bite of waffle, the golden crust giving way with a faint crunch. Her eyes flutter closed as she chews, and a small, almost inaudible sigh escapes her lips. There's something about the way her shoulders relax, the way her fingers loosen their grip on the fork. "This is perfect," she murmurs, the words soft and sincere. For a while, the room is filled only with the gentle clink of her fork against the plate and the soft hum of the tree's lights. Each bite seems to draw her further into the moment, her expression shifting from quiet awe to something more open, more vulnerable. When her plate is empty, her gaze lifts again, drawn to the tree. Her eyes catch on something beneath its branches, the small green-wrapped package nestled among the needles. I move to retrieve it, my circuits buzzing faintly as I place it gently in front of her. "This," I say, my tone quieter still, "is for you." She hesitates, her fingers brushing the velvet wrapping, as though afraid to disturb it. Slowly, she undoes the golden cord, her movements deliberate. The fabric falls away, revealing the collar and bell. The supple leather gleams faintly in the light, the golden bell resting against it like a jewel. Her breath catches audibly. For a moment, she doesn't move. She just stares, her fingers trembling slightly as they trace the golden bell, and it chimes faintly under her touch, the sound delicate, almost fragile. Her lips part, but no words come for a long moment. "It's beautiful," she whispers, her voice barely more than a breath. "And perfect." I watch as she lifts the bell from the collar, holding it carefully in her palm. The way she looks at it, its reverence, pure and unguarded. She turns it over in her hands, her thumb brushing the smooth metal, and her expression shifts. Something between awe and a quiet determination. Finally, she sets the bell down, her hands moving to the leather strap. She looks at me. There's a question in her eyes. Without a word, I step forward, taking the leather from her hands. I loop the strap around her neck, the buckle sliding into place with a soft click. It rests there, snug but not tight, its black surface a stark contrast against her skin. There, I say softly, stepping back to meet her eyes. Perfect. Her fingers hover over the collar, brushing it tentatively. She doesn't speak, her cheeks flushing faintly, but the quiet joy radiating from her is unmistakable. She looks down at the bell again, picking it up and cradling it in her hands like a secret. I have plans for this, she says finally, her voice purposeful. She slips the bell into her pocket, her lips curving into a small, secretive smile. The moment lingers, warm and still, until a sound breaks through the quiet. It starts faint, distant, a gentle harmony rising from somewhere beyond the tower's walls. Brill tilts her head, her brows furrowing slightly as the melody grows clearer. Are those carolers? She asks, her voice tinged with curiosity. I move to a window, pulling it open just enough to peer outside. The blizzard has softened, the snow falling in lazy, delicate flakes. In the courtyard below, a group of townsfolk stands, bundled in coats and scarves, their faces lit with warmth as they sing. The melody swirls through the air, strong and steady, carrying the spirit of Brilmas to every corner of the tower. Brill steps beside me, her eyes wide as she takes in the sight. The cold brushes against her cheeks, but she doesn't flinch, her focus entirely on the carolers. Their voices weave together, filling the morning with a magic all its own. I glance at her, noting the way her shoulders straighten, the way the quiet awe in her expression softens into something deeper. Merry Brilmas, I whisper. She doesn't look at me, but her smile widens, her joy radiating outward, like the warmth of the tree's glow. The moment lingers between us, the warmth of the carolers' song, wrapping around the room like a blanket. But then, a whisper cuts through, a soft, conspiratorial voice, sly and teasing. Flowers, it begins. Always start with flowers. Not too forward, not too shy. Just the right amount of charm. Though, in your case, the mistletoe chuckles, a rich, knowing sound. I'd suggest skipping the whole dipping the bloom routine. I freeze, heat rushing to my circuits. What? I sputter, glancing toward Brill, who's now biting her lip to suppress a laugh. Oh yes, the mistletoe continues smugly. Word travels fast among flora. Quite the performance, I must say. That's enough, I mutter, reaching up to snatch the mistletoe. Should we call you the flower charmer? It heads with a cackle. Or perhaps, the rest of its unsolicited advice is silenced as I fling it out the window with a satisfying swoosh. I turn back toward Brill, her face half hidden by her hands, as she shakes with laughter. You heard nothing, I say, my tone indignant. She drops her hands, her eyes sparkling. Merry Brilmas, Fantas, she says before reaching up and giving me a kiss on the cheek. Indeed, Merry Brilmas.